everyone out there. Our 2001st episode of 2021 Sports Talk 757. I'm Claudel Clark, your host of the show, executive director of the Hampton Roads Sports Commission. And for those of you joining us for the first time, Sports Talk 757 has been created to continuously showcase and market and expose athletes, administrators, programs in the local area. So, we're really fortunate to do this. We're affiliated with the Hampton Roads Chamber. We also have some very gracious sponsors I'd like to recognize before we get started. You can see them in the background here: Optima Health, Atlantic Bay Mortgage, CHKD Sports Medicine, Pepsi and Town Bank, and again, of course, our hosting partner, the Hampton Roads Chamber. Today we have with us a very, very good friend, Michael Cuddyer, childhood teammate, minor league counterpart and colleague. Spent 15 years in the major leagues, Twins, Mets, Rockies, and did a number of those things there. And but also, a community, very active in our local community, very supportive of youth baseball, been very outspoken in a positive way there, and just done a lot of other great things off the field. I think really the best part about this, he'd probably rather be known for things off the field than on the field. So those are great traits there. Mike, good afternoon to you.
Claudel, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Good. As we were joking offline, we're getting a little gray, we're getting old, but we're still kicking.
I know, man. It's crazy seeing all the kids that are coming up of players that we played with, and seeing my son play against a lot of them. It dates yourselves.
But how neat is that? Our kids and seeing our teammates and their families and kids, and now those guys are coaches and doing great things. It's just great use of the time. So as I always tell people, if you're making good use of your time, it's no problem getting old.
That's right. Good way to say it.
Well, good. But again, the show really highlights and really aims to expose what our sports figures in the local area and region are doing. And Mike, being a native, played all those years, again, in Minnesota and New York and Colorado. It's really awesome to have you kind of settled back in the Chesapeake, if you don't mind me saying that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And just have you right here where we grew up, and just, not too far really from Great Bridge. So, I mean, it's just really awesome to have you back in the region.
Absolutely. And, I never really left. I always spent my off seasons here, and my wife was a teacher at Hickory High School when I met her. So she had already established her roots, even though she's from Northern Virginia. So there was really no reason to leave. And, we talked about moving up close to her family. But then once I retired and I realized for the first time in 15 years I didn't have to move, we decided not to. So, and my kids are entrenched in the community. And obviously I've been entrenched in it for well over 30 plus years.
Of course. Well, kind of getting started with it. Obviously baseball lifer, but, did you play any other sports growing up, and just kind of what got you started with baseball?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, it was a little bit of a different era when we were coming up and when we were growing up. And I played everything. I played soccer I started out playing soccer at like 4 years old. I think it was the first sport you were allowed to play at that age. And then baseball, basketball, I played throughout my whole childhood. Got to middle school, played football as well, stopped playing basketball and wrestled. Wrestled through middle school. Yeah, wrestled through middle school. And then when I got into high school, continued playing football, moved back to basketball, and then obviously baseball. So I played it all, played every sport. And, I loved practice. No matter what sport it was, I loved challenging myself to get better every day at some type of skill.
And, we're kind of just figuring out who you are and kind of warming up, but, just dive right into it. Is that something that you recommend for young players to play multiple sports, or should you just be sports specific? What's your philosophy on that?
No, I 100% recommend playing multiple sports. And when we talk about playing multiple sports, it doesn't mean you have to play high school sports at multiple high school sports. Or it doesn't mean you have to play competitively with these sports. But whether it's going out in your front yard or your backyard with your buddies and playing basketball and playing football and inventing games, getting creative, using your imagination, I think that's lost a lot. A lot of times that, in this day and age, we have so many structured whether it's practices or games. And, you know, when you're playing baseball, you have to have an umpire, you have to have, you know, first base coach. You know, that kind of takes away a lot of the creativity from these kids and a lot of the use of imagination from these kids. So I encourage free play, invent games, but play multiple sports, do multiple things, especially at a young age. I play competitively. And I also recommend playing an individual sport along with a team sport, whether it's golf or swimming or something like that, because it's two totally different mind games that you get put in that you can benefit from.
Certainly. You know, so that's an intangible, or that's one of the things that help. But, you know, again, early on, people who knew you, saw you off a distance, scouts, coaches, persons from the media, they kind of knew it was something special early on. And that's a credit to you and your family. But, you know, what were some of the things that, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Cuddyer or some of the youth coaches or some of the persons who kind of got you off to a good start, what were some of those things, intangibles, that they kind of pushed across to you or imposed on you?
Sure. Well, I think number one, love what you're doing. You know, they never made it. My parents never pushed me, never forced me to do anything. They always encouraged, but never made me go out and practice in the driveway or in the garage. Never made me go shoot free throws or anything like that. So I think that was a big credit to them. But also being a good person, being a good human being, being well-rounded, getting good grades, taking, you know, focusing in school. You know, I think those are things that you carry through life, not just in sports. And, you know, in anything you do, try and do it to the best of your ability. And, you know, one thing my mom, I remember always saying, my mom's only 5 foot tall. I'm 6'2", my mom's 5 foot tall. And I remember when I was 10 years old, I had a good game in baseball or something. And I went, and every single person I saw around the field, I was like, did you see me hit a home run? Or did you see me do this? Or did you see me do that? And I remember she pulled me to the side. She goes, look, she goes, if you do something that's worth talking about, people are going to talk about it. You don't have to talk about it yourself. Wow. And she goes, I may be only 5 foot tall, but I can still get on a chair and knock you back down. And, you know, that always stuck with me as far as ego. And ego is a big thing. And if the quicker you can shed that ego, and it's tough in this day and age of social media and self-promotion, and you're seeing the buzzword of be your own brand, right? It's tough to be able to get that ego and wrangle that ego in, but the quicker and the sooner you can do that, the more success you're going to allow yourself to have.
So, I mean, you know, with that attitude, moving through middle school, high school, you know, making good grades and doing good things, you know, a lot of people saw that. You know, at what point did you realize, hey, look, this it was going to turn into something bigger? At what point did you really start to aspire to play minor league at that time and in Major League Baseball? When did the light turn on for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you get asked that question quite a bit, and I'm sure you did as well when you played professional baseball. And, you know, for me, I don't think there was never like a moment. There was never like an epiphany, like, oh man, this could be my life.
Right.
I never did it for that end game. And I think that's the biggest thing is, you know, I put a lot of hours, you know, I put a lot of hours in practicing. We all did. I put a lot of extra hours. You know, if it was football season, I still went into the on the field and threw baseball. Basketball season, at the end of practice, I went to the gymnastics room and hit off the tee. But I didn't do those things with an end game of, I got to do this to be a big leaguer, or I got to do this to get drafted. I did it because I loved it. Like, I loved the feeling of a bat in my hand. I loved the feeling of throwing a baseball. I loved practice. I know that sounds funny, but the games to me were kind of boring. The games to me were just kind of like I got to go do this, but I want to get back to going to practicing and working and trying to get better. So I guess in a long-winded way of answering your question, I never really sat down, whether it was when I got drafted or whatever, be like, man, I can make a life out of this. I just consider myself very fortunate that I can get to continue to practice. I get to continue to get better.
Well, that happens, you know, when you love that sport.
Mm-hmm.
If you love a baseball or a basketball or a golf or whatever it is, you don't mind shooting the extra basket or, chipping and putting or, taking BP. We love those parts of it. So,
Yeah.
I
And,
certainly agree.
We use the word work a lot, right? Like, got to get your work in. You got to go work out. I never, ever consciously and subconsciously used the word work. I never said I got to go work. I got to go get my work in. I always use the word I got to go practice, or I got to go play, or I got to go train, because it never ever was work. Like just like what you just said, it was never like, God dang, I got to go hit in the cage. And if I did feel like that, I didn't go hit in the cage. I mean, it's just plain and simple. Obviously there's things that you had to do and times that you didn't want to do it. But for the most part, I can honestly say that if I didn't feel, especially as a kid, if I didn't feel like going and hitting in the garage, I didn't go hit in the garage, because I didn't want to get burned out. And my parents never made me, because they knew that, if you go do something you don't want to do over and over and over again, eventually you're going to start resenting it.
That's very true. So, you have success there, and we're with Martin Oliver and Greg Jennings and, the Wildcats there. At what point did you get college offers, and did you, settle in on a college or a university? And, what was that process like for you? Obviously, you chose a different path, and that worked out all right.
Sure.
But what was your college of choice at that time?
Yeah, so I would say I probably started getting interest, and again, it's a lot different now, and you could probably speak to the way it is now a little better than I can, being a former head coach at a university yourself. But I started getting interest probably. I went to Florida State's baseball camp as a freshman, and had a good week of the camp, and I continued to go there in the next 2 years, and I think that was really where I first started garnering attention from colleges. And then I went to one. They didn't have team showcases back then. It was more individual showcase type things. I went to like 1 or 2 of them a year, but I would say really started to really get college interest after my sophomore year, going into my junior season. Ended up choosing Florida State. That was where I wanted to go all along, but I did take my 5 official visits.
Okay.
I didn't verbally commit as an 8th grader or any of that stuff that's going on nowadays. But I wanted to go to college. I truly wanted to go. Like, that was my goal. I wanted to play. My dream was to play in the College World Series.
Wow.
That was what I wanted to do. Ended up obviously getting drafted, and went the whole summer where I still thought, even though I was the 9th pick in the country, I thought I was going to college. Ended up at the very last minute, 12 hours before I was supposed to pack up and go to Florida State, the Twins bumped their offer to a point where I couldn't refuse it.
Right. Well, awesome. And to credit to our program there, we also had another teammate was in the first round as well, John Curtis, a good friend of ours. But, so you chose the minor leagues and spent time there. A lot of times people think, well, went from high school straight to the major leagues. But, kind of in looking at it, I remember in the paper, I'm kind of doing my thing over at Norfolk State, and you're in the minor leagues. And it looks as if, you had thousands of at-bats in the minors. What kept you determined there, and what made you push through New Britain and all these different places in the Twins organization at that time, Fort Wayne? What made you be able to push through all that, have the staying power to get to the majors?
Yeah, I spent 4.5 solid years in the minor leagues, and then
people don't realize that.
And then was able to get called up. But then after I got called up, I still went up and down and fluctuated for another year or so. And again, it goes back to, I just considered myself lucky to be able to continue to play the game, practice the game, get better at the game, and hone my craft and get to hold a bat in my hand. But I mean, were there times of adversity? Of course there were. Were there times of self-doubt? 100%. Were there times of frustration? Absolutely. Times I thought I should have been called up before somebody else. But what it all came down to was that didn't happen. I mean, plain and simple. I'm struggling, or, I should have gotten called up in my mind, but I didn't. You got two options. You can either moan about it or you can go out and play. And I mean, that's it. It's really, when you get into pro ball, it's kind of cut and dry. Like, there's no I mean, I guess there might be a little bit of politics, but there's no politic. And you either can or you can't. And that's the way it is. So, I just continue to go out and play the game wherever I was, whatever level I was at. I tried to be the best that I could each and every day. And, fortunately I was able to get an opportunity. But I would say in 2005 was my first chance of getting an everyday opportunity with no strings attached. And I failed and ended up going back to being a role player again. So, there's adversities along every which way. And it sucks. And now I look at like the kids that we coach and it's like, man, I want to protect them so bad from those adversities. But then I think of that mindset of me being selfish, like, why I'm not so special that I can handle it and these kids can't, So we have to trust our kids to be able to handle the adversities that are thrown their way too, just like our parents trusted us.
That's right. Well, like during that time though, you're in the minors and 15 years in the majors. In my opinion, playing at a very high level, a person may bat 250 a year, bat 275 a year. Sometimes you get over 300. People say, oh, well, you didn't have such a great season. It was 250. That's still pretty doggone good. Guys are throwing 95 or better. So to have those, successful years, how were you able to stay, so mentally prepared and so physically prepared all that time? What do you credit that to?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that evolved over time. I always felt like I was a mentally tough person and a very positive person. But then I would say it wasn't until I was 34 years old that I really understand the importance of mental training, mental preparedness, mental peak performance, as we can call it. And it was because of our manager, Walt Weiss at the time, brought in an MMA fighter, and he went over how he got himself mentally prepared for a fight 6 months in advance. And I took some of these techniques that he was able to teach us, or at least tell us in that just an hour talk, and apply it to that year. And that was the year I won the batting title. Wow. And it was to me, it was not a coincidence of being able to take that mental training and carry it over and apply it to my game, and then allow myself to basically flourish after already being in the big leagues for 12 years. And at that time playing professionally for 16 years. And finally learning how to apply that.
Well, you mentioned, batting title there. Some of the more obvious things: two-time All-Star, played with a number of teams. That's an accomplishment in itself, to see multiple leagues, multiple teams, multiple states, multiple levels of competition. But, what are some of the things that stand out to you or that are really meaningful to you over that span of time? Is it the All-Star? Is it the, winning the batting title? What's some of the most meaningful things to you, Mike?
Well, I would say this. I'm obviously proud of some of the accomplishments that I was able to achieve or get, but I think more than anything, I'm proud of the way I went about it. I'm proud of the way I accomplished those things, meaning I'm proud of the relationships that I formed. That's what I remember the most, are the relationships. memories fade. Unless you're like Coach Oliver and you can remember what happened in 1952 in the third quarter with 2 minutes and 36 seconds left of a guy. I can't do that. I have a hard time remembering any of the games that I played in. I have a hard time remembering the details of games, but I don't have a hard time remembering the people. I don't have a hard time remembering the relationships that I was able to form, whether it was teammates or coaches or training staff or front office personnel or ushers or the babysitters that took care of our kids, or even back, in my first few years in the minor leagues, remembering the host families.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's what was most special. And what I take most about my experience in professional baseball are these relationships. And what's cool about that is that you don't have to be a professional athlete to experience these relationships. Everybody gets an opportunity to form special relationships, no matter what it is that they are doing with their lives or how special they feel like their life is. you have those opportunities to form these bonds and these relationships that are going to last a lifetime. And that has nothing to do with socioeconomics, what you do and as a job or as a profession. We all have that opportunity. I think that's what's so cool about life.
Right. Well, that's a really neat thing. You talk about relationships and people you met along the way. People think we're texting back and forth and seeing these guys every day, but how often do you see maybe some of your major league teammates, or even a David Wright, or the Upton brothers who were major leaguers along with you? Are you able to be in contact with these guys, or do you guys get together and kind of talk baseball? How does that work?
Sure. I'm on a bunch of different group text chains that we all are on.
Okay.
But I'm on a few different ones, from whether it's, like you said, fantasy football with David and some of those guys, or, guys that are coaches still in baseball, and I'm picking their brains or they're picking my brains. But I would say on average, I would talk to somebody from those relationships once or twice a week for sure.
Okay.
Obviously, with the time that we're in now, I don't get to see any of them on a regular basis, but we still talk and joke around, or if we see something that happened in a game, we'll text, and which makes it fun. But I would say that's the one thing. I don't miss competing. I don't miss stepping in the box. I don't miss playing at all, not even a little bit. But I miss talking the game at an elevated fashion. I miss talking the game every day. I love my wife, but she doesn't want to sit and talk about situations with the runner on second and what we should have done right there.
Right. She's thinking about what to take out for dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome, man. So, look, so after 15 years, all people don't realize, they say, oh, well, your pro career, but they don't realize a college or a high school career and all the work done. But after 15 years and all those at-bats, all those practices, all those trips to the training room later in life, how did you know that it was Mike's time to retire?
Yeah. And that's a great question too. And it was something that I didn't take lightly. Obviously, when I retired, I had one more year left on my contract for $12.5 million.
And we're still doing very well, I might add, kind of getting better with time.
And, but ultimately at the time, my son was 7. My girls were 3 and 4, 3 years old, around 3 or 4 years old. I always ended every season, and I looked at 3 different categories: physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Okay.
And if I had 2 of those 3 intact, then I knew I could continue. I could continue to play. Okay. Whether it's one year I was mentally fried, but emotionally I still loved the game, and physically I felt good, or one year my body was a wreck and I needed surgery, but mentally I was still sharp and emotionally still loved the game. I knew I was going to, over those 5 months off, I was going to be able to overcome that deficiency I didn't have. But at the end of 2015, I looked at it and I was like, I didn't have any of the 3. Mentally, I was done. Physically, I was hurt. I had to have a couple surgeries coming my way, and emotionally, I just didn't love the game anymore. I didn't love playing the game anymore. I was burnt out, and it took me till I was 36 to get burnt out, but I was burnt out, and I was homesick. I loved my family. My kids were in school, so I didn't get to see them as often, and I just knew it was time. I couldn't give the game what I had given the game, throughout my life at that point. And I always promised myself to be a good self-evaluator. And when I realized I couldn't give what I felt like the game deserved to give, then it was time to walk away. And it really wasn't that hard of a decision. It really wasn't that hard for me to do. I know I consider myself very fortunate to have that thought and to have that feeling and to be in that situation where I got to walk away when I knew the time was right, because I know a lot of athletes and a lot of players don't get that opportunity, and they kind of lose themselves when they get out of the game because of that. But I was in a good place, and it was just time. We can't do it forever. It's going to be time. And I knew that. And I think that was the biggest thing, is even at 18 years old, I knew at some point my career was going to be over. And I think if you go through life with that thought, when the time comes, it makes it easier, because everything you've done up to that point you've done it 100%. And I feel like that's why I say I was proud of the way I went about it.
That's great. And it's a great testament to, you and your upbringing, to have that mentality. It's not just a money thing or not a status thing, or it's not a dream thing. You're doing it based on sound principles. And that's just the best way to do it. We always talk about transition for college players, youth players, even professionals. What do professionals do after baseball? It's my understanding, you're still with the Twins in a capacity, helping young players, working with peak performance and things. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, when I retired, I obviously retired with the Mets. We went to the World Series in 2015, and I decided it was time. Well, I had spent 14 years in the Minnesota Twins organization, and that was my home. I didn't want to leave, but business gets in the way sometimes. And, I went on to play in Colorado. But when I retired with the Mets, one of the first phone calls was from Dave St. Peter, who's the president of the Minnesota Twins. And, I relayed to him that when the time is right, I wanted to retire as a Twin. And still haven't officially, formally done that, and obviously never will. Now that we're 5 years later. But instead of doing that, he offered me a job, a position with the Twins. And it's a special assistant to baseball operations to the whole baseball side of things. So it's basically like a consultant. I could have a conversation 1 minute with our rookie ball hitting coordinator or hitting coach. Then I could have a conversation with a AA player. And then in 10 minutes later, have a conversation with our GM about free agents or trades. So it's really consulting throughout the whole side of it, and also going to promotional events that the Twins have, whether it's the Hall of Fame weekend or different things where they invite former players to come and mingle with the fans and stuff like that. I'm obligated to do that as well. So but it's something good to kind of keep me into the game without really having to leave the family and leave home. I get to do most of my stuff remotely, which is nice. And now with the way that obviously we're communicating today, this has kind of opened the door to allow me to expand my role while still being able to stay here in Chesapeake.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. And again, that helps you kind of transition out of the game. You can kind of wear out of it, burn out of it, but you just don't want to be done with it altogether. So, how neat is that? Looks as if you're frozen a little bit there, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm back now. Can you hear me?
Sounds good. But, we talked about no problem at all. We talked about the prospect side and you helping out the organization. But, things have changed now, especially with COVID and budgets, and just time has changed. So as a former first rounder, again, tremendous accomplishment there. How has the draft changed and recruiting changed and evaluating prospects changed? Can you take us a little bit through that?
Yeah.
And how much tougher is it now to get into professional baseball and to make it to the majors versus when we were playing?
Well, I mean, obviously, for those that aren't aware, the draft is going to get knocked down about 30 rounds. So there's only going to be about 20 rounds now. So getting drafted is going to be tougher if that's your goal, just to get drafted.
Right.
But I don't think before that, the first 10, 20 rounds is going to be any less hard. I mean, it was hard. It's not easy. I mean, there's only so many people in the world that have an opportunity to get into pro ball, and then even less of an opportunity to make it to the major leagues. So I don't think anything's changed. I think the way technology has infiltrated the game has obviously changed. I think you're starting to see more analytics as far as how players are evaluated. That's a little bit different and a little bit changed. But ultimately, if you're good, you're good.
Right.
I mean, we run into a lot of people that try and make big deals of, in baseball is concerned, whether it's, exit velocity off the bat or any of these things. I mean, those things have been around forever. We've had stopwatch to time the 60s. We've had radar guns, all different evolution of radar guns to measure pitchers' velocity. But at the end of the day, if you're good, you're good.
Right.
If you can play, you can play. I've seen lots and lots of players. I'm sure you've had lots and lots of teammates that, man, you look at him, it's like, God, he hits the ball 400 feet. Man, he runs a 3.9 to first base. Man, he throws from the outfield. It's 150 miles an hour, but never gets out of A ball because they can't play.
Right.
So I think that's a big thing that I try and tell kids, and try and tell kids' parents and other coaches as well. Yes, it's one thing to have the tools. Yes, it's one thing to have those tools that are measurable. But if you can't play, then it doesn't matter. You got to learn the game. You got to learn how to play the game, and you got to be able to take those tools and be able to apply it to the game and make them applicable. You know, back in the day, I don't know if they still do, the scouting lingo was, you know, your arm strength's a 7 out on a scale of 2 to 8. Your arm strength's a 7, but it plays to a 4.
Right.
Well, I don't want to hear what my arm strength is. I want to know what it's playing to, so I can try and get that more applicable.
That's
because
true.
if I can throw hard, but I can't use it out on the game, then it doesn't really matter. So I think that's the biggest thing. Yes, things have changed. The way they've been evaluated have changed. But at the end of the day, if you can play, you can play.
That's true. That's true. And then playing with those tools, not just having them, or not just being a showcase hitter, as they call it now, or a showcase pitcher. You know, what do you really do when those games get started? But, you know, thinking about that, and what some people don't realize was, you know, you were a straight A student, you know, for the most part coming through, you know, so obviously somebody who believes in academics. So from an academic standpoint and an athletic standpoint, you know, what are some of the advice, surface level advice you would give to athletes who may be listening, who may hear this on the back end, who are trying to aspire to go to college and beyond? What's some of the advice there?
Well, obviously there's surface level advice. You know, you got to have good grades in order to get into college, and even get looked at. You have to, you know, if that's your end game, well, there's steps that you have to have in order to make it to college. You know, college, except, I mean, yeah, you get a little more leeway if you're an athlete and you're a scholarship athlete. But at the end of the day, if you're an E student, you can't get into college. You can't play college sports, college athletics. But if on a deeper level, being more well-rounded, being able to process information quicker, you know, especially in a sport like baseball, that's the separator most of the time, is the ability to get information and process it quickly and then apply the information.
Right.
And the quicker and the faster you can do that, the better of a player you're going to be. And that can all be trained, just like we lift weights. That can all be trained in the classroom. Being able to read and process what you're reading and then apply it to the exam, or be able to look at a math problem, go through it in your head, and then be able to put it on paper. That's all training for then now when you get on a field, being able to look over the field, process the information that's on the field, and then apply it.
Certainly.
Other ways, learning if by reading and by studying and by speaking to your student, or to your fellow students and your teachers, you're learning public speaking skills. You're learning how to talk to the media. You're learning how to understand, how to realize what people are asking, and then be able to answer it in positive ways. So all these things that you're learning in school, you can apply to your professional life. And that's not just if you're an athlete, that's in any walk of life that you're doing. You're training right now in school for the ability to be able to do these things in your professional life.
Certainly. And we talk about, you know, training young players and assisting young players and giving them the intangibles and the things they need. You know, tell us a little bit about the organization that you have right here in the Tidewater area. I believe it's the Young Guns.
yeah, we've got a little team. You know, it's not an organization. We had a team. We started it probably, I'd say, about going on year 5 now, maybe. And we haven't had too much of a turnover, which is kind of good. We've added some players here or there. Some players have left, but, you know, it's fun. I enjoy teaching baseball skills. I enjoy teaching the game. Coaching, I like the administrative part, the games. It's not my favorite, but I do enjoy teaching the game. As you can tell, when I talk about the game, I get very passionate about the game. I do enjoy, as I've done my whole life, practices. I enjoy grinding with the kids and teaching them how to grind and the importance of making the monotonous, boring practice perfect and special and good, because that's a skill in itself, is being able to take 100 ground balls and have every single ground ball that you took be important. That's not an easy thing to do. So I enjoy that aspect of it. And then being able to hang out with my son, I enjoy as well.
Now, obviously, with that team, you have the ability to determine how many games they play and the schedule and how they go about their business. But you also have done a lot of work and spoken a lot about how youth baseball players should be treated and be used. Take us through a little bit about some of the things that you've seen and some of the things that you'd like to see. We see the overuse injuries and players growing or playing too much or participating on too many teams. Just kind of briefly, what are your thoughts on that, and how can we kind of make that better?
Well, first and foremost, I think we play too many games on the youth side of things. Games are there to reinforce the skills that you've developed. But if you don't practice, then you don't develop skills, which therefore, when you get into the games, you don't have anything there to reinforce. It's just like tests. We don't take a test in school every single day. We don't go to 2 weeks. I don't go to class and, man, I got a test today on this. Well, I got a test 30 minutes from now on this. You don't get tested every day. So what in youth sports, what we're doing is essentially we're testing kids every day without teaching them the material. And we're not practicing that material. When you go into a math class in fourth grade, they give my son did it. He's got 100 multiplication problems he had to do, right? And until you got those 100 multiplications down, they kept giving you the practice, giving you those sheets. Well, we don't do that in youth sports. We don't give them the 100 multiplication problems. We say, here's 10 of them, and this is what you're graded on. And then we get mad at these kids if they don't do well in the game,
right,
or don't have a good season. So I guess my core belief is we got to practice more and play less games. And then as you get older, that kind of shifts a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It does shift as you get older, but as a youth, playing these 50 game seasons, 60 game seasons, that's just, in my mind, ridiculous, because not only are we playing 50 games and 60 games in a season, we ain't playing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We're playing Saturday and Sunday, and that's it. So you're playing 3 games on Saturday and 2 to 3 games on Sunday. Sometimes you're playing these one day tournaments where you're playing 4 games in one day. And I just, in my opinion, that's asinine. So fortunately, Sean Todd, who is a guy that we know that we played with, he's our coach, and he really got the boots on the ground last year and developed a little bit of a league with these travel ball coaches for 2 age groups. And we started doing 3-game series throughout the week and having different practice requirements for teams and pitching rules and pitching regulations for these kids. And it went well, and hopefully we can continue to do it. But that's the other thing, that like when kids are just playing in tournaments, the standings reset every weekend. Well, in real life, standings don't reset every weekend. You don't get a start over every single weekend. If you go down, if you go 0-4, you got to be able to teach your team to be able to build back up, to be able to get yourself to 1-4, and now 3-4, and now we're back to 500.
That's right.
That's a win, and now we're 2 games over. Look at where we started. Now look, we got a chance to play for a championship. That's teaching kids how to persevere, not just reset the tournament every single weekend. So, I think we as a sports society, youth baseball culture needs to get back to more league play where games mean something, not just reset. And then on these tournaments and Saturdays, they're seeding games and they don't even mean anything, because whether you hold your guys back or don't play it's to me, it's a bad culture that we're in.
Well, no, I mean, it's great that you're speaking out on it so much. and not just speaking out on it, living, having that play out through your organization and your coaches and the way you guys are doing business. And I'm certainly sure other people will take notice and then kind of follow in those footsteps. That's a form of community, but you're also active in other areas in the community. I believe we even sit on a board or two together. So what are some of the other things in the community that you're active with and that you're really supportive of, if we could?
Yeah, so whether it's the Boys and Girls Clubs, CHKD, my wife, the board of directors of the Chesapeake Public School Education Foundation. There's different things that that we're involved in and we're able to do. And I say, you remember Sammy Sosa when he said baseball's been very, very good to me, right? Well, baseball is a sport. Baseball is an innate subject. It doesn't know that it's been good to you or hasn't been good to you.
Right.
People have been very, very good to me. So I've not that I feel obligated. I feel that need to be in return, and anything that I can do to help in this community, I try and do, and my wife and I try and do. And we probably don't do as much as we could. None of us do, but
right.
we try.
Mike, we certainly appreciate this time, man. Again, I know you're busy schedule and consulting with a lot of persons and helping with your own organization and having other goals, but we do appreciate this to have sports in this area and help to promote the sport of baseball in this. So we appreciate that, man. We really do, and I hope we can continue to stay connected both in youth baseball and things we do in the community and just to help sports in this area.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you, Claudel, and everything that you're doing for sports in this area and this community as well. It's good to see when good people come together and try and help out other people that are coming along.
Oh, good, man. Well, thanks to everybody who's joined us today. We want to take the time to thank our sponsors one more time. Optima Health, Atlantic Bay Mortgage, CHKD Sports Medicine, Pepsi and Town Bank. Please mark your calendar for our next episode on January 18th. We'll have Jamie Frankenberry with us and Larry Robama, senior sports writers from the Virginia Pilot newspaper, talking about spring sports. Also on this Saturday, 5:30, we'll kick off a new series, taking the next step, helping youth athletes kind of get to college and helping them and their families with some of the challenges and questions that they face moving forward. So we'll have a panel of experts starting off with baseball, but we'll also run through softball over the course of the year, track and field, football and basketball. So excited about that new series getting kicked off. For more information, please visit HamptonRoadsSports.org, and you can also visit Hampton Roads Sports Commission's YouTube page for our previous episodes of this. But again, Mike, best of luck to you and your family. Please stay safe out there. All of you who have tuned in, and just good afternoon to everyone.